our next presenters here. To begin with, Mike Calise from Schneider Electric. He's a director at Schneider Electric. I thought I worked for a big company in my day job with NRG, which is the second largest power company in the country. This guy's company is like 5 times bigger, and so is his imagination. He's a true innovator and industry leader. He puts forward a vision for all of us in this industry and is introducing someone who even has a bigger vision. So Mike Calise.
Very kind. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Let's certainly thank the City of Santa Monica for hosting this, another successful event. Yeah, I work for a big company, that's for sure, $32 billion global leader in energy management. We're architecting energy efficiency throughout the globe. But the way you do that is you think like a startup, and you think disruption. And when we look at this word disruption, we're seeing a tremendous transformation in something that is a huge global challenge, transportation and efficiency. And in the past, those didn't mix too well. But in the future, what we're seeing is disruptive innovations in the form of technologies, but also in the form of business models. And this is really what we're setting out to do at Schneider Electric. You know, people, I got interviewed this morning over breakfast, and somebody said, you know, the classic situation. What are the impediments to EV adoption, right? And it's, you know, we all know these are battery costs and the lack of available infrastructure. At Schneider Electric, we're solving the availability of charging infrastructure. But when you really look deep down inside, why is this going to sustain? Who are the people who are actually making choices to drive these vehicles today? Well, I think in the end, you can take your science, and we'll even talk about this in the future, but you know, the reality is driving an EV is very cool, okay? People who are early adopters get an idea of where this is going and are making a statement. So just on my way to the airport, I was driving my company Chevy Volt, modest, and there was a guy in a brand new Vet. Now this is, so for a moment, as I was passing him on the HOV lane, I realized I was actually cooler than the guy who drove the GM company Vet, right? I mean, and I thought, hey, I'm starting to get it even myself. So a Prius plug-in driver is definitely cooler than a Prius hybrid. I mean, you would agree. I would think so, right? A BMW i3 owner is officially cooler than a BMW 7 Series owner. This is absolutely the case. And certainly for Tesla drivers, they may be the coolest group on the planet right now, unless you're fortunate enough to get a BMW i8, and then you might even be cooler than a Tesla owner. So you can see that this requires early adopter mentality, but it also requires disruptive innovation. I could tell you the real answer to a lot of our challenges is dealerships don't necessarily embrace EVs, and that's why here, you know, the center of gravity for the success of the dealers and everyone who's out there sees that disruption happens, and they embrace that disruption. And they look for new business models which could someday replace the business models of their sustaining services with new sustaining services and integration into the homes and integration with utilities. So at Schneider Electric, we think big picture, but we also act like a startup. And where there's disruption innovations that match disruptive business models in trading electrons for cash, trading electrons for trajectory, movement. Which is really what we're doing. We're thinking about things and being incentivized for those things, and that's allowing us to propel to our next destination. So what does that mean, right? It's aspiration for higher education. Where can you actually get paid to think? It's called employment. Okay, so now you're going to get paid to drive because you're going to take electrons, they're fungible, they're on the grid, they're going to be transferred into your vehicles, they're going to store that energy, and you're going to deliver stored energy to a next destination. So Schneider is a very big picture company solving global challenges in the smart cities. And when we look at the microcosm of an electric vehicle, it's a roaming energy storage device. And when you look at disruption about where people buy their vehicles, we're seeing new innovative business models, which frankly we're creating, which tie the workplace, where you work, with the home. And we reconcile those funds in the cloud. So these are some areas of innovative disruptions that will continue to proliferate. And we embrace all our partners, we embrace all our competitors, because we're in early days, and we're still looking, for those of you who know, we're in the bottom of the fourth inning right now, about midway through EV willing period. And as we move toward 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, and the end of the decade, we're going to see a massive tipping point, and we trust that this will happen. There's a guy who's written about this, who's pretty world-renowned, and we've embraced this guy, Tony Seba, and I'm going to read a little bit about what he's done. So Tony is a lecturer in entrepreneurship, disruption, and clean energy at Stanford University. He's the author of Clean Disruption of Energy and Transportation: How Silicon Valley and California will make oil, nuclear, natural gas, coal, electric utilities, and conventional cars become obsolete by 2030. So there's some people that are going to be disrupted in that. So those folks who are interested in that need to understand where the disruptions happen and get control of new disruptions. His previous books are Solar Trillions and Winner Take All. He brings 20 years of operating experience in high-tech companies like Cisco, RSA Data, and he was the founder and CEO of Print Nation, which was really one of the first internet companies to disrupt a $100 billion printing industry. Today, he holds several board seats and has helped develop more than 400 megawatts of solar and wind throughout the world. He advises policymakers and investors on energy and transportation. He's been featured in Business Week, Investor's Business Daily, Forbes, Fast Company, Success, among others. He holds an MBA from Stanford and a BS in computer science from MIT. And we at Schneider Electric are happy to sponsor Mr. Tony Seba. Let's hear it. Thank you.
Mike, thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you, Schneider, for sponsoring the event. I appreciate that. So thank you for being here. Thanks for the invite. Before I take you into the future, though, I'm going to take you into the past, because there's always something to be learned about history. Can you all see this? Yes? Where is the car? Can anyone tell me? This is a picture from New York City, 5th Avenue, Easter 1900. Where is the car? All right, I won't keep you waiting. I know some of you are hungry. There. One car. This is 13 years later, same place in New York, 5th Avenue, Easter parade. Where is the horse? Where is the horse? Come up, check it out. So here is disruption at work. And this is not the first time that we're going through a disruption. Society, industry has gone through many, many, many disruptions in the past. And this was one of the major disruptions in transportation. And to go from all horse to all cars took about 13 years. And that's history, and we can learn from that. Now, let me define disruption. But before that, let me tell you there are three major concurrent disruptions that are going to change everything about energy and transportation over the next 15 years. By 2030, transportation and energy will be nothing like what we have today. But what does disruption mean? Because we bandy this word around a lot. What is disruption? Let me quickly define it. Disruption, a disruptive product, is when a new product or service basically creates a market. So EVs have started to create a market, but at the same time, it destroys an old market. It can transform it radically or destroy that market. That is a disruptive product or innovation. And 10 years ago, as some of you know, Kodak was the #1 company in photography, or should I say the company formerly known as Kodak. And so that's one of the disruptions that we have seen over the last decade. And usually, there's something interesting about disruption. It's usually the experts and the insiders who basically say, nah, never gonna happen. Not in this lifetime. No way, it's gonna take 100 years, Good boy, go home, right? But there are some technologies that basically will show you, and that's what I'm gonna do today, that are disruptive. And I'm gonna start with the electric vehicle. It's one of the 3 things I'm gonna talk about today, the electric vehicle. And some of you have already started talking about it, and there are some EVs outside. And so you probably know that the 2013 Motor Trend Car of the Year was the Tesla Model S. This is not the EV of the year or the alternative car of the year. This is the car of the year. Consumer Reports said that the Tesla Model S was the best car they have ever tested, ever in history. And already the Tesla Model S is the #1 selling car in its category, 70,000 plus luxury vehicle. So basically a car that did not exist 10 years ago is outselling BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, and so on and so forth in that category. Of course, there's the minor detail that some of you may be asking, who can afford an electric vehicle? Now, that's not mine. I actually don't own a car. That's a photo op. But my question is the EV disruptive? At any price, is the EV disruptive? In the book, in the Clean Disruption, I give you 9 reasons. I'm going to run quickly through 5 of them, why the electric vehicle is disruptive. 1, the electric motor is 5 times plus more energy efficient than the internal combustion engine vehicle. Your car, those of you who have gasoline cars, turns about 20% of the energy in the gasoline into actual mechanical power, 20%. And there is nothing that Detroit can do about that, because there's a minor issue called the laws of thermodynamics that has an upper limit as to how much can be turned from energy in gasoline into actual power. Whereas an electric motor turns 95% of the energy in the battery into power. That's 1. 2, partly as a result of this, but partly because electricity is cheaper than gasoline, the EV is 10x at least cheaper to fuel. The cost to fill up a Tesla Model S, which goes 260 miles, is $5. The whole tank, right? Not just a gallon, $5. I want anyone to tell me, when was the last time you filled up for $5? Okay, this is 10x at least cheaper than oil cars. Electric vehicles are, it looks like, more than 10x cheaper to maintain and operate. Now, in disruption, every time you have 1 10x improvement in an important dimension, you may have a disruptive product. I have mentioned already 3 dimensions in which we may have a 10x improvement over the existing system. And you may have heard that Elon Musk announced a couple of weeks ago, infinite mile warranty. The EV is so cheap to maintain. Electric motors last basically forever, and it has so many fewer parts than a gasoline, than internal combustion engine car, that an EV, it takes almost nothing to maintain. So basically, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, said, look, for 8 years, infinite mile warranty. I mean, drive to the moon and back many times, within 8 years, you're under warranty. Try that, Detroit. 4, wireless charging. Now, those of us who are interested in public transportation with electric buses, there are cities already implementing wireless charging. So every time you stop, the bus pulls into a stop, they're charging the bus. And since they're already going through the same routes, day in and day out, they don't have to stop to plug in. So essentially, this doubles the range of electric vehicles, or at least buses where we have those kind of charging stations. And this is a biggie. And anyone who's driven an EV knows the power, the torque. It just goes, psst, right? You don't need to go like, right? That's the sound in which we're used to driving over basically all our lives. But when you drive an EV, the torque is instant. You start, and that's why an EV is so much more powerful and goes from 0 to whatever in a couple of seconds, in 3, 4, 5 seconds, something that only the most powerful cars do. Tesla, Elon Musk said, our next SUV will have the performance of a Porsche 911 Carrera. Now, this is going to be a $40,000 SUV. So all of these things that I'm telling you are essentially disrupting the basis of competition. So for 100 years, the car industry got us used to this curve. You want more power, more performance, you pay more. You want the Porsche 911 Carrera, you pay the $100,000. You want the Buick Enclave, which was the #1 SUV in its category, $40,000. Then you pay less. Of course, you get half the performance. And that more or less is the curve that we got used to basically in our lifetime. What the electric vehicle is doing is this. It's shifting that curve so that you can get the performance of a Porsche 911 Carrera in a $40,000 SUV. Not today. And the issue is, when are we going to get there? But what I wanted to mention is this thing disruptive? And it's very, very disruptive. So yes, it's disruptive. The question is, when is this thing going to happen? When is the disruption going to happen? So I took a look at, so we need the infrastructure to make this happen. And the main issue, one of the 2 main issues holding back electric vehicle adoption is the cost of batteries. And I've done the numbers, I've looked at the industry, and I think that you need a 200-mile minimum range for EVs to go mainstream, 200 miles. So based on current prices in the market for lithium-ion batteries, and based on 200-mile ranges, then this is what we get. But before that, let me tell you, because I don't want to guess. I'm going to give you the numbers, the actual data, the evidence from the market. For 15 years, the cost of lithium-ion batteries went down by 14% per year. So those of you who have laptops, and I see a lot of them open, the cost of those batteries, which, by the way, is what Teslas are using, slightly modified lithium-ion batteries, went down 14%. We expect it to go down at least 14% per year for the foreseeable future. But it actually is getting better because in the past, only the information technology industry, the electronics industry, used to invest in lithium-ion batteries. But now, there are 3 multi-trillion-dollar industries investing in batteries. IT, of course, the auto industry, and the energy industry, the solar, wind, and so on of this world. So you have 3 multi-trillion-dollar industries investing, tripling the investment, tripling the demand, and so on and so forth. So as a result, the curve, the drop in battery costs is actually accelerating. So over the last 4 years, it went from 14% to 16%. And actually, Tesla is way ahead of this curve, by the way. But as an industry, it went down 16%. And you may have heard about this little factory that Tesla is building. And by the way, I'm using Tesla as an example, not because I'm endorsing them or own stock or anything like that. Tesla is building a $5 billion battery factory in Nevada that single-handedly will double the world's lithium-ion battery capacity. This one factory. Just because it's being built, the cost of lithium-ion batteries is going to go down another 30%. And that does not include breakthroughs that happen at that factory, or because others, competition, are going to build their own versions. So here's where we are. 200-mile car, electric vehicle, like the Model S, costs $70,000, $75,000. But if we do the cost curve of lithium-ion battery, which is the main cost item of an EV, then this is what we get. By 2017, 2018, the industry will be able to build a $40,000 electric SUV that goes to 100 miles. Not just Tesla, the industry. Now, did I mention that these are SUVs that have the performance of a Porsche 911 Carrera? So when these SUVs with this performance hit the market, boom, there's going to be no way that the equivalent price gasoline vehicle is going to sell. I mean, that's disruption at work. By 2 years later, by 2020, the industry will be able to build a $31,000 EV. $31,000 is the average price of a gasoline car in America. So by 2020, the industry will be able to beat the average manufactured gasoline car in America. And 2-3 years later, they will be able to build the low-end car, which today costs $21,000. So within 8 years, and maybe if it takes a little more time to build out the infrastructure, and some people are going to make mistakes and so on, within 8 years, by 2022, 2023, the industry, the electric vehicle industry, will be able to disrupt the gasoline car industry. Now, we usually own our cars for 10 years, so there's going to be this displacement of older vehicles. So by 2030, these are my predictions based on these numbers. The mass migration from internal combustion engine gasoline vehicles from gasoline cars will be starting within the next 3 years, by 2017, 2018. By 2030, all mainstream cars will be electric. 100% of all mainstream cars by 2030 will be electric. And by extension, gasoline will be obsolete. Now, we're not done. But wait, there's more. The autonomous car, you may have heard about the self-driving car that has come out of Google and Nissan and other companies. Recently, the CEO of Nissan announced that they will go to market with a self-driving car, fully self-driving car by 2018. That's 4 years from now. And a lot of people are shocked that how did this happen, right? And what is going to be the result of all these self-driving cars? But the truth is that we already have semi-autonomous, we also call them autonomous vehicles, in the market. Essentially, all high-end cars today, from Audi and BMW and Mercedes and so on, have self-driving capabilities, nearly all of them. And in fact, they have been migrating to the medium and the low end. So this is something that has been happening already. Parks that drive themselves, that park, self-park, or that maintain a certain distance between cars, or actually will brake if you're not paying attention. I think the Class C, the Mercedes Class C, already is self-driving on the highways, already. Okay, so this is something that has been happening for a while. It's not a binary zero, non-zero. The NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Agency, has a 5-level matrix from 0 to 4, basically saying, okay, you're a level 0 if you have a car that the human is the driver all the time, 100%. And you have a 1, and you have a 2, and you have a 3, and basically you have a 4 when you have a fully autonomous, fully self-driving car where you don't need steering wheels, you don't need a human, you don't need basically a person, period, right? And look at where we are. We already have cars in levels 0, 1, 2, and 3 in the market. At Stanford, we are in conversations with one of these companies to have a self-driving shuttle to go around the campus. Because those of you who've been there, you know how large Stanford is. You just can't walk from one place to another. We have shuttles today, but we're already in conversations. We may have a self-driving shuttle at Stanford, on the Stanford campus, next year. Okay, these things are happening, and they're happening as we speak. It's not in the future, it's now. Now, let's talk about price, because these things must be pricey, right? And this is what a Google car sees. It's pretty fascinating to look at how this technology is called LiDAR, which is short for laser and radar, LiDAR. And when Google disclosed its prices in 2012, LiDAR cost $70,000. 2 years later, it was $10,000. I know a company, I know an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who claims to be building one with the same functional capabilities for $1,000. So basically, the exponential decrease in costs so far, I've told you about the lithium-ion batteries, LiDAR, and so on and so forth. Think of the electric vehicle and the self-driving cars as computers on wheels. as tablets on wheels. They are progressing, they are getting better so fast that they're getting better at the speed of Moore's law, which is at the speed of the computers that you own. So it's no surprise that companies like Tesla that have started to dominate this field came out of Silicon Valley, and they see themselves more like Apple than GM or Ford. It takes a whole different set of technologies. You have to write software and hardware and computing and so on and so forth, and you have to keep revving pretty much products all the time. So again, it's no surprise that the self-driving car, this one came out of Google, a computer company. So the car companies that actually want to live through this disruption have to get into this right now, or otherwise, wait until I tell you something else. The other question is, will users be ready for this? Cisco Systems did a survey, and this is the result. Depending on the country, 95% of Brazilians say, I will use a self-driving car right now. Right now. It's not even in the market. China, India, US, 60% of the market is ready to get into a self-driving car. Another part of this survey said, would you put your kid in a self-driving car and send her off to school? And the numbers were pretty similar. So people are pretty ready for this kind of car. Now, here's another disruption that is going to come out, and those of you who are in urban design and architecture and landscaping, we're really not good drivers. People ask me, can I trust a self-driving car? Well, test-driving cars already are better drivers than you are. Period. Sorry, they're better drivers than I am. Stanford is working on a self-driving car that learns from Formula One drivers. So we're beyond us. I mean, we're talking Formula One drivers to see their reaction and how they handle the car and so on and so forth. And they're pretty accurate in terms of the software that self-drives. All those highways that we complain about, and those of you who live in the LA metro area, who spend hours and hours every day in traffic, we actually don't use 95% of the highways. We don't. That's because we're not great drivers. We leave too much space. We don't accelerate when we have to. We're like eating and putting makeup on and talking to the kids, and some people text and drive. So in fact, we're not really great drivers. And technology helps a lot with this. If all cars had adaptive cruise control, which is one of the many autonomous vehicle technologies, we would have 40% better use of highways. So essentially, if all cars had ACC, that's almost like doubling the highway space out there. So I was talking about ACC. If you have ACC plus inter-vehicle communications, those two technologies alone boost highway capacity by 273%. So anyone who's talking now about increasing highway capacity, about building more highways, all of those highways are going to be empty. Okay? All of them. Because when we have an all-autonomous vehicle market, that in and of itself will increase highway capacity by 4x. By 4x. Now, here's another interesting fact. We pay a ton of money for our cars. I don't care what car you have. Average is $31,000. To park them 96% of the time. What a waste. What a waste, 31 grand or whatever plus gasoline and this and that to park it 96% of the time, okay? Free parking is very expensive. It's very expensive. Now, here's what's gonna happen when we have self-driving cars. Now, you know companies like Uber and Lyft and so on that can pick you up. You basically click on your smartphone, someone comes up, pick you up, and boom, takes you to your destination. Imagine those kind of software infrastructures with self-driving cars. Basically, they can take you from anywhere to anywhere, anytime, right? You could go at a bar, you could go to school, you could go to work, drop you off, and then go off to pick up somebody else. So what's gonna happen is that cars, instead of being parked 90% of the time, they're gonna be driving 90% of the time. Essentially, we're not going to need cars. What we need from a car is mobility on demand at a fair price. And by the evidence, early evidence, looks like on a per mile basis, we're gonna pay 10x less for this kind of service, car on demand, so self-driving car plus on demand. So we're not going to need to own a car. This is called car as a service, or at least I call it that. And remember 15 years ago when we talked about software as a service, that everything would be on the cloud? Folks would say, me, use software as a service? I don't think so. And now, of course, most of the industry is as a service. So, conclusion, if we have a car as a service society, we're not going to need 80% of the cars that we have now. So the industry, the car industry, is going to go from selling 100 million cars a year to selling 20 million cars a year. So the auto industry will be massively disrupted. So disruption number one, we're going to go all electric. Disruption number two, we're going to go all autonomous, and the industry is going to shrink, okay? No need for 80% of parking spaces. Imagine that. I mean, the whole downtown can be parking space free. Imagine what we can do with all that space. Green, parking. No, parks, right? Green parks, not parking. Imagine what we can do. More density, more wealth, more health. And that is going to happen. Helsinki in Finland is already planning for its downtown a car as a service and transportation as a service, not just car. Ferries, buses, bikes, everything as a service, where you can call it from your smartphone by 2025. That's only 11 years away. So they're betting that this thing is going to happen, and it's not really a bet. We already have most of the technologies. So conclusions from the self-driving car. One is that car as a service will change the concept of car ownership. We're not going to need to own cars. Maybe one or two people will, but as a society, we're not going to need to own cars. Two, the new market, the new car market will shrink by 80%. Period. It's going to shrink because we're going to need fewer cars, which means the car insurance industry is going to be obsolete or at least disrupted. Oil, again, is going to be disrupted. So even if you don't believe the electric vehicle thing, the car market is going to shrink by 80%. So oil is going to be hit twice with two waves of disruption. And of course, the auto industry, the whole transportation industry will be disrupted. And we're not going to need 80% of the highway space and the parking space out there. Almost a third of the LA metro area, according to some figures I've seen, is parking. A third, we're going to get most of that back. Imagine what we're going to do with that. 80% of parking and highway space will be useless. Now, let me tell you quickly about the solar disruption. Solar PV, again, another disruption. Solar photovoltaic, solar panels, have gone down in price by 154 times since 1970. 154 times. Now, compare that with, and partly as a result of that, the market for solar has gone up 100 times. So when you have an exponentially decreasing cost and an exponentially increasing market, you usually get a disruptive kind of innovation and disruption in the market. So quick numbers, solar basically since 2000 has been growing at 43% per year. Despite all the media stuff that you hear about crisis in solar, it's been growing worldwide by 43% per year since the year 2000. Okay, now, if you keep that growth going, it essentially means that by 2030, all the world's energy, not just electricity, all of the world's energy will be solar by 2030. So, of course, you have to ask yourself, can we keep up with that 43% annual growth? So, and that's a question that we need to ask, of course. So let's compare solar PV, which always goes down because it's a technology disruption, with resource-based energy. And when you look at coal, nuclear, natural gas, and oil, since 1970, which is the baseline that I've used, they've all gone up by anywhere from 6 times to 35 times. Oil has gone up 35 times since 1970, right? All of them go up. Now, there's been a dip in natural gas and all that stuff, but look at the numbers. When you compare how solar has done relative to these 4 forms of energy. Since 1970, solar has improved its cost position by 5,000 times relative to oil. 5,000 times. I mean, if you're sitting there in an oil well somewhere and you're looking at this, you think you should be worried? I mean, it's improved its cost position by 1,500 times relative to nukes. And that doesn't include all the massive subsidies that nuclear gets, right? So with the low prices of natural gas with fracking and all that stuff, even including that, since 1970, solar PV has improved unit costs by 2,200 times relative to natural gas. 2,200 times relative to natural gas. Is natural gas cheap? And so this is what's happening, and this is happening everywhere in the world. Now, there are different markets with different prices. I mean, the US alone has 3,000 electricity markets, and there are different tax bases and monopolies and so on and so forth. But this curve, in one way, one shape or another, is happening in every single place in the world. Solar goes down and all the other energy costs go up. That's been happening since 1970, right? I mean, I put out all the data out there. And solar will continue to go down. The solar learning curve is 22%, meaning every time the infrastructure doubles, it goes down 22%. And it has done so since 1970. And we know it's going to keep going down. It's a little bit like Moore's law in computers. So it's going to go down by another 2/3 by 2020. Solar will continue to go down. In fact, solar is so cheap right now that when you talk to solar installers, all the other costs other than panel, are way higher than solar panels. Solar panels now are relatively cheap compared to permitting and compared to installation costs and so on and so forth. Okay? So by 2020, even assuming that all the other resource energy forms don't go up, which they will, solar will have improved its cost position relative to oil by 16,000 times. 16,000 times. Relative to natural gas by 6,800 times. Okay? Reminder. Solar PV will have improved its unit costs by 6,800 times relative to natural gas by 2020. So any promises of the natural gas millennium that's coming, just take a look at these numbers. And of course, 16,000 times relative to oil. So the rate of growth in solar may actually accelerate. 43% was just the beginning. I mean, just like the internet accelerated while I was an early employee at Cisco Systems. The internet growth accelerated, and folks said, wait, but you're starting from a small base. Yeah, everything starts from a small base. Okay? So, but even if it doesn't accelerate, here's what we're looking at. By 2030, essentially, if we keep going at least this growth rate, everything. Solar will eat everything. So, the clean disruption means that will be 100% vehicles. Most of them will be autonomous or semi-autonomous at least, and 100% solar by 2030, maybe before. Thank you.